All right, we are live. This is the pilot episode of Alan's Astro live stream. This is basically just going to be a test run of some basic elements, namely the live view through the telescope, also the audio. Speaking of, let me lower the background music a little bit. So if you want to join chat, you can type in comments at the chat, and I'll check periodically and hopefully be able to keep up with all of it. So if the background music is too loud, or like my mic is too soft or too loud, let me know in the chat there. And in the meantime, I'm going to be scrolling through a few main deep space targets. We'll probably look at the Andromeda galaxy tonight. Right now we're looking at the Pleiades, which is M45, also known as the Seven Sisters. But we'll go through several different targets depending on what time it is, and there is a little bit of cloud coverage tonight. I had hoped to try to target Jupiter tonight, because Jupiter is actually in opposition, which means we have it's the largest in the sky for the year that it's going to be tonight. But unfortunately, the seeing conditions are only about average, and for planetary viewing, you really need like above average to excellent seeing conditions to get sharp details of the planets. So we'll just be doing some deep sky objects. We might do some star clusters. We'll do galaxies and nebulas. So if you have a request, just put it in the chat, and maybe we can slew to that and check it out. Okay, we've got a couple of viewers already. Hello. And I will show you the telescope here. This is basically my security camera that I just have on the telescope, so I can watch it as it's slewing. Add something on here. Let's copy the webcam. Okay, there we go. So please bear with me tonight. This is definitely it's challenging. It's very challenging to kind of balance all this together. Okay, and then we'll go back to the ASIAir view. So the acquisition software that I'm using is just known as the ASIAir. The exact computer that I have is the ASIAir Plus, and it sends a signal to my Wi-Fi router, and then I pick that up on my laptop for streaming. And I've tried to kind of work out the bugs over the past week and a half or so on this, and it's been a very steep learning curve, but so far it seems like it's going to be fairly stable. The first few tests that I ran, I was trying to do it on just purely Wi-Fi signal, and it kept dropping out. I tried to run it through like a tablet. I tried to run it through my phone and do like air server to get it to cast to my laptop so I could stream it, and it was just not stable. So basically, I had to run 100 feet of Cat5 Ethernet cable all the way out to the telescope. I plugged it into the ASIAir, and so far so good. It's been fairly stable. So let me check the chat here. Hello, Mr. Chris Cole. Hello, Kieran Lindsay. And let's see here. Let's go to. Actually, let me show you the weather app that I use. This is called Astrospheric, and unfortunately my cursor is not showing up on this, but basically what you're looking at, where it says like the date, like Saturday the 7th, Sunday the 8th, Monday the 9th, under that there's these columns that each one of those numbers is basically just a representation of the time, and the blue bars underneath that, like the bluer that bar is, the better that the conditions are for that particular time. So right now we just have average seeing conditions and average transparency. You can also see like my location in the map above. That's in Greensboro, North Carolina. But anyway, back to the ASIAir. So we're going to try to slew to let's try a galaxy here. Let's see, Andromeda will be up. Let's see, Andromeda will be up. Ooh, that's awfully close. I better not do that one because that one's right at zenith. If I go to something that is right at the zenith, it's possible that the scope will actually strike the tripod. So let's try something else here. That nebula might be too faint. Let's see. Let's just look up the triangle galaxy here. There it is, and we'll just hit go to. And while that is slewing, we can watch it on the telescope. Everything goes correctly. Okay, well, all right, that was very fast. So it's already on the triangulum galaxy. Go back to the ASIAir. And so I'll just do a 60-second exposure here. This is my exposure time. And once I click this shutter button, it'll start counting down here. So you can see how long the exposure is going to take. And down here, it'll say like either shooting or preparing. And when it says preparing, that just means it's preparing to send the image to the live stream here. So we'll go ahead and start this, and the countdown will begin. And it says shooting. Actually, take off the webcam, then you can see. Okay, so down in the lower right corner, that little green, you'll see that in the green text it says shooting. So tonight we'll just be doing like single exposures. Probably the next episode I'll do what's called live stacking, which means it's going to start adding all of these single images together, and each one that it adds together, the image will just get brighter and brighter, and you'll see more detail in the image on the ASIAir here. So let's see how much more time we have. Okay, Well, there it is right there. Okay. So that is what a 60-second view of the Triangulum galaxy looks like. Let's see if I can increase the size here, zoom in on it. Okay, it is slightly zoomed in. You can just barely make out, you can see the core of the galaxy, and you can see somewhat of the spiral arm bands in the galaxy. So if that is 60 seconds, I'll show you what a 2-minute exposure will look like. Get back to the controls here. Okay, so go back to the ASIAir. We'll set this to 120 seconds, and I will increase. Okay, the gain is all the way up at 270, so that's going to be collecting as much light as possible. And by the way, that streak in the top of the image, that is, I believe that's a satellite trail. It could be a plane, but I think that that's a satellite trail. Usually, a plane will have like 3 distinct parallel lines. Okay, we'll go ahead and start this exposure. And we're counting down. Hello, Kieran Lindsay. Is the can you hear the background music, and is my mic audio, is it about right? I've got about 65 seconds left on this exposure. So I guess I should tell you a little bit about the, while this is exposing, I should show you a little bit about the telescope that I'm using. This is a Celestron EdgeHD, and it is the 8-inch version. But I have what's called a Hyperstar, which is basically like a lens adapter that is screwed onto the front element, or the secondary, where the secondary mirror goes, and that actually speeds up the telescope. Here we go. Got 3 seconds left. 2, 1. So that was a 60-second exposure, and then here is a 2-minute exposure. So you can see how that 2-minute exposure brightens up the image. You can see more of the spiral arms a little bit in a little bit more detail. And we blow this up. See if that's going to work. Nope, it won't let me do that through the ASIAir, so I have to do this manually. Okay, so enlarging it here so you can see it a little bit better. So this galaxy is quite a large galaxy. Aside from the Andromeda galaxy, it is the second brightest galaxy that we can see in our night sky. get back to the controls again here. And just for giggles, we'll do a 3-minute exposure just for comparison. Okay, so that was 120 seconds. We'll switch it to 180 seconds. And if I click this annotate button here, basically what it does is the camera looks at the pattern of the stars and it triangulates in the sky exactly where it's at. And sometimes it can actually tell you what you're looking at. Here up at the top it does say the triangulum galaxy within this circle. It might be cut off in the live stream. Let me check. Yeah, it's cut off in the live stream. Let me drop it down. I don't know if it's going to let me show you or not. Yeah, it's behind the top bar. But let's reduce this back down. Alright, we'll go ahead and begin our 3-minute exposure here. The camera is cooled to negative 20 degrees Celsius, and what that does is that it actually cools the camera sensor, and that will lower the noise that we actually see in the image. It's almost like film grain from old film cameras, except it's just digital noise. And so the cooler that I get that camera sensor, the less noise that will appear in the image. And this is really important when you start stacking these images together, because if you're stacking images with a high rate of noise, it will just keep exponentially compounding that noise. So in order to combat that, you lower the temperature of the camera sensor, but then you can also take what's called calibration frames. You'll take dark images at the exact same temperature, except you put the either the lens cap on the telescope, or you'll put the dust cover on the telescope. So you're basically just taking a dark image. It's just completely dark. But what the ASIAir does is, as it's exposing that image, it's reading all of the noise that is appearing on that camera sensor. And once the image is complete, it can subtract all of that grain from the image. So it just constantly keeps cleaning the noise out of that image. And whenever you stack several darks with what's known as your light images, your light image means the image where you can actually see your target. If you stack the dark images with the light images, it'll clean up the image considerably. And there's different types of calibration frames like that. There's also what's known as flats, and there's bias frames. But generally speaking, darks are the ones that will pull all of the what's known as the read noise away from the light image. Right, so how much longer do we have on this exposure? We've got about 30 seconds left. Okay, so I need to boost up my mic volume a little bit. You can do that. Okay, I'll boost this up to about 8 decibels. Check, check. Does that seem a little better there? I'm so soft-spoken that I have to boost it quite a bit. And there is our 3-minute exposure. It's already come through. That is considerably brighter. Now, one thing that you'll start to notice is the longer that I do this exposure, the more brightness that we see around the galaxy or whatever target that you're looking at. And this comes from everything from just like moon glow, or it can come from, you know, street lights. And so as of right now, I'm battling, you know, front porch lights from neighbors and Christmas lights everywhere. If a car passes by, you know, while it's exposing, sometimes you'll see, you know, an extra light streak in the image. Okay, sound is good. All right, good. Thank you, Chris. And so let's check out a different target. Let's look at, I don't think Orion is up yet. We've probably got a couple more hours before the Orion Nebula rises above the horizon. So let's do, well, I'll tell you what, just for giggles, we're going to go to Jupiter here, just to show you why I would normally not target Jupiter with this particular telescope setup. Okay, so it's slewing to Jupiter, and this is just for a comparison, because the lens adapter that I have on this telescope right now, it greatly reduces my focal length. Normally the focal length that I have on this telescope is if I'm doing planetary, it's about 4,000 millimeters, but now with this lens adapter, it's only about 385, 390 millimeters. So Jupiter is just going to look like a speck. We might be able to see like some of the moons beside it, but I don't know, I kind of doubt it. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so right off the bat, you see that it's super bright, so we'll have to reduce the exposure on it. Let's try a 1 second exposure. And I do have, you can kind of see that like kind of ghostly image on this kind of lower left section, and that's just like an optical aberration. In here, you see this little dark area that almost looks like a hook. That is also an optical aberration from the wires that are going from the camera across the lens of the telescope for this particular lens adapter setup. So obviously even 1 second is still too bright for Jupiter. It's so large, it reflects so much sunlight that even just a single second of exposure is still too bright. So we're going to lower it down as far as I can get it. This is 1,000th of a second exposure. There we go. So that is 1,000th of a second exposure. Let me blow this up so you can see exactly what it looks like. You can see some of the moons around it. Actually, you can see one of the bands now that I'm looking at it closely. But okay, so if I blow it up, that's what it looks like, and it's still too bright. So let me lower the gain on the camera as much as I can, and I'll take that 1,000th of a second exposure again. Wow, it's still too bright. So this telescope is so fast that completely maxed out as far as like the shortest exposure time that I could possibly do with the camera gain set as low as it can. It's still too fast for this. Jupiter's still too bright. But you can see, obviously Jupiter is the main white dot there, but you can just barely see a couple of the moons. there's one above it, there's one directly below it. I think there might be another one in there. If I'm not mistaken, excuse me, there's this is Io and Europa. But anyway, let's get back to something that we can actually see some detail here. All right, so let's try. Let's try a different star cluster here. I'm not exactly sure what this one is. Let's zoom in, take a look. Okay, so this is Theta Tauri. We'll give this a shot. Okay, it's slewing to the target. I try to get the security camera onto the target while it's slewing, but it's so fast, it slews so fast that before I can even get the camera up, it's already on target. Okay, so here's just the basic star cluster of Theta Tauri, and we'll boost up the exposure to 30 seconds, and we might be able to see, if I'm not mistaken, Theta Tauri actually has a little bit of nebulosity around some of these core stars. It might show up on the planetarium here. Yeah, you can see a little bit of like blue haze around it. So what that means is whenever you have large blue stars like this, it means that these are fairly, relatively speaking, young stars, and so they're going to have more of a bluish haze to them. So let's do like a 30-second exposure. I'll boost up the gain. Go ahead and start that. Okay, here it goes. Take off the webcam. Okay, so I can't really see any more nebulosity around that. So they might just be just very, very young stars that they don't have any nebulosity around it. You can definitely see this is what's called an open star cluster. And so in comparison, we'll see if we can find what is known as a globular star cluster. So let's see what we can find as far as a globular star cluster. There's the Christmas tree cluster. There might not be any large globular clusters out right now. This time of the year, like generally speaking, summertime is often better for the for those types of clusters, but we might be able to find something here. There's the salt and pepper. Let me look for M13. M13 is the Hercules star cluster. Yeah, it's definitely not up. So maybe we'll just try like the beehive cluster. This is actually a really beautiful cluster. There's the shoe buckle. There's the little beehive. Let's type it in. So M44. Oh wait, that's not up either. Let's just try that. Yeah, okay, it is below the horizon. So basically I have to look for targets that are like from the east to the like the southwest right now, simply because I've got trees on the west side of my location, and the entire like northwest, like from north to northwest, is completely blocked with trees. So let's see what else we've got here. Okay, here's M48. That's also below the horizon. All right, we'll go back to the Pleiades. I know that this one's up, and this one does have some nebulosity to it, so I'll click Go To. All right, and here is just a very, very short exposure of the Pleiades cluster. I really like this kind of string of stars that you kind of see on the right side. This is what's known as an asterism. A lot of times you'll just see like a line of stars, or they might form like a circle, or whatever it might be. It's some type of pattern that your eye is just automatically attracted to, and those are called asterisms. But let's do like a fairly long exposure on the Pleiades here. Let's make sure that we're centered up. And let's do a 30-second exposure of the Pleiades here. So I click the annotate button, and you can see that it has found the main nebula, which is NGC 1432, and there's also what's called Merope Nebula, which is NGC 1435, and then these stars. Whoops! I hope I didn't just cancel that. I don't think that I clicked the shutter button. Okay, now it's exposing. So we're counting down from 30 seconds. And even though this will only be a 30-second exposure, you will be able to see a little bit of the nebulosity around some of these larger core stars. And these are very, very large stars. And they're fairly young, so they all will have kind of a bluish cast to them. Okay, it's coming through now, it's preparing. And there it is. So right here, like around these large stars, especially this one, you can see like this kind of these hazy areas. And these are essentially emission nebulas. Or excuse me, reflection nebulas. this haze is being reflected um, from this star. It's ionized gas that's kind of being reflected back to us here. So this is what a 30-second image will look like. So let's do a 3-minute exposure and really see if we can pull out some of the blue color in this area here. Okay, counting down for 95 seconds. And so far so good on the stability of the stream coming in from the telescope, the ASIAir. I can't tell you how hard it's been to try to get all of this stable and configured properly to do a live stream. I should have checked my main planetarium software to see what targets were going to be up right now, because I really got kind of a short window tonight because it's supposed to get cloudy here shortly. So I just figured I would try to grab what we can see. So the Pleiades, which is also known as Messier 45 or M45, is an open star cluster, obviously, and sometimes it's also considered an asterism, but it's got the core of it. Those really large stars are what's known as B-type stars, and basically it's located in the constellation of Taurus. And so the star cluster that you're looking at is about, if I'm not mistaken, it's over 400 light years away. It might be 450 light years away, which is actually relatively close as far as in the deep space objects go. And so here's our exposure. We can definitely see more blue color standing out into here. You can definitely see these areas are standing out more, getting a little bit of star spikes here, and that's just from the Hyperstar. You can see over on this side, there's a star that kind of has a slightly reddish tint. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. That might not let me on the stream. Okay, yeah, it's not gonna do it there. But anyway, there's a star over on the left side that has more of a reddish color. And generally speaking, the redder that the star is, the older that it is. Okay, we haven't checked it. So let's try a galaxy. Let's try a different galaxy. We'll go to Andromeda. This is M31, and fortunately we should be enough past, I better check that, we should be enough past the zenith so I won't get a telescope striking the tripod. Just make sure that's past. Yeah, that should do it. It should be far enough away from it. So we'll go ahead and slew to that. Now the Andromeda Galaxy, or M31, is a really good analog for the galaxy that we're in, the Milky Way galaxy. They're fairly close in size. The Milky Way is about 100,000 light years in diameter in comparison to the Andromeda. Let me double check. So the diameter of Andromeda is 152,000 light years. So it is quite a bit larger, but as far as galaxies go, that's still considered like a medium-sized galaxy. Yeah. Okay, it's syncing up now. And whenever it slews to the target, it takes a very short exposure and it matches up the stars, and it basically just does like some trigonometry to find its position in the sky. Oh, okay, that's not a good sign. That is not a good sign. All right, we just lost the signal from the telescope, so I'm gonna have to run out there, double check it. Hopefully, I didn't just strike the. Probably what happened. It probably was still too close to the tripod. Let's get it farther away here. Just in case. All right, so I'm gonna run outside and just double check that my cables are okay. In the time being, I'm just gonna show you a picture of this huge, massive star real quick. All right, I will be right back. Okay. Alright, we are back in action here. Not exactly sure why Andromeda didn't show up like that, but so I went outside to check, make sure that it didn't strike the telescope, because that's the last thing that you want. If a cord wraps around, a lever or something like that, it can literally just rip it right out of the telescope or the ASIAir, which can be very expensive. So I always want to try to keep an eye on that. But it is still connected. And let's just try it again, because I think that it's not exactly sure. Okay. All right, let me center this up a little bit better. So what we're looking at here is the Andromeda galaxy, but there's also a very, very large elliptical galaxy in the background here, and we'll just barely be able to make that out. And then there's another galaxy right here that's probably also an elliptical galaxy. But let's do, just for comparison's sake, we'll just do a 30-second exposure on this, yeah, full gain. Okay, it's counting down now. Okay, for some reason, YouTube is giving me back an error. Okay, now it says the stream is excellent condition. So, all right, anyway. And why did that not be centered? Take off the crosshairs here. Okay, so just with a 30-second exposure on Andromeda, you can see these dark dust bands, these dust lanes right here. And a lot of this is just from, collisions, or from where a star explodes, and there's just dust that will start to be pulled towards the core of the galaxy, which is, generally speaking, there's a supermassive black hole at the center of this galaxy, or of most galaxies, and it'll start pulling all of this dust and gas in, and it has a tendency to form these dust bands, these rings around the galaxy, and we can just barely see it on the front side of the galaxy here. Up here is that really large elliptical galaxy way, way in the background. Here's a smaller galaxy that I pointed out earlier. But you can see the full scope of Andromeda here. It takes up pretty much the entire screen, and we can just barely see it with a 30-second exposure. So let's go ahead and do a 2-minute exposure. Go ahead and click start on that. Let's see here. Can y'all see my cursor on this ASIAir screen here? Like I'm doing like circles with the cursor around the center of the galaxy. Can y'all see that cursor on this particular screen? Because I've noticed whenever I switch back to my broadcasting screen, the cursor doesn't seem to show up, but supposedly it shows up on this screen. But I can't watch them both at the same time, so I don't know if you're seeing the cursor. All right, we got 70 seconds left on this exposure. Oops. Copy this link. All right. So there, we've got 10 seconds left on the exposure. My camera is still nice and cool. It is still at -20 Celsius. That's a good sign. I can't finish the exposure. It is preparing it. And you'll see down here, now it's sending it. All right, there we go. So notice how much it blows out the center core of the galaxy, which is, I don't know, I just kind of find this ironic because there's a supermassive black hole with the core of Andromeda here, and this is how bright it is with a 3-minute exposure, or excuse me, a 2-minute exposure. But you can definitely see the dark dust lanes and the bands here stand out much more. You can see, I don't know if you can pick this up on your YouTube screen, but there's another one that's on this side of the galaxy here. So we're almost getting a full circle of the dust lanes all the way around the galaxy. And I'm starting to see some of the, there's nebulae in this part of the galaxy here. I'm just starting to see some of that coloration here. I don't know if you'll be able to pick that up on your screen. Let's zoom in. So in the upper right corner, you can see what looks like kind of like a little mini star cluster here. I know that that's a really large nebula there. There's another one right here, and there's some smaller ones right here. I can just, since I know this region, I guess I can see it a lot better than probably what you're going to be able to see on your YouTube screen. But okay, so that was a 2-minute exposure, and just for comparison, we'll go ahead and do a 3-minute exposure and see if we can get these dark dust lanes to completely surround the galaxy, so we can kind of see the full circle of it. Starting 180-second exposure now. Another look at the telescope. You can see how it's pointing pretty much almost straight up and down, and this is because the Andromeda galaxy is near the zenith, which the zenith just means like straight up from where you're at in the sky. So the back of the telescope, it's a little hard to see on this particular image, but sometimes the back of the telescope can hit one of the legs of the tripod, and that's what I refer to as a tripod strike or a telescope strike, and that's a big no-no. You don't want to do that. So this camera kind of helps me protect against that. What I can't see in this view very well, which I kind of hoped that I would, is the cables. Like you can see the Ethernet cable is running underneath the scope there, but there's other cables that are connected to the camera on the telescope. There's cables that run from that camera to the acquisition computer. There's cables that run to the little mini guide scope, which is that tiny little scope on the well, in this view, on the left side of the telescope there. And there's a couple other miscellaneous cables, like heating cables that heat the front element of the telescope. The front element being the glass on the very front, and that needs to be heated so it does not form dew on that lens. If it forms dew on the lens, it's bad enough because it'll start obviously messing up your image, but the worst part about it is if it gets into your telescope, it can form, mold spots and stuff like that, and that is very, very difficult to clean. All right, how much longer do we have on this exposure? We got 20 seconds left on this exposure. So again, this is going to be a 3-minute exposure. What we're looking at now is just a 2-minute exposure. So we'll instantly see this brighten up. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That exposure is finished. Preparing and sending. There we go. Oh yeah, we can definitely, or at least I can see on my view, these dark dust bands are really starting to stand out. You can actually see some of the gaps in between the dust clumps and clusters. You can see some of these dust bands closer to the core of the galaxy, and even the large elliptical galaxy at the top right of the screen. I can even see a little bit of structure in that. I doubt. Let me zoom in on that just to see if I can show you some of that. This might be wishful thinking here, but okay, zooming in on that. You might not be able to see that on the YouTube screen. Now I zoomed back in towards the core of the galaxy, and you can see some of the dark dust clusters just to the right of the blown out core of the galaxy. And this is whenever you're doing astrophotography, in order to get an image, let me show you what a regular image of Andromeda looks like here. So if you're just doing astrophotography, your main goal is to pull out as much detail as you possibly can, of course. And so you can see how the core of this galaxy, even though it's bright, it's not blown out. So in order to accomplish that, you do very, very short exposures. Like for this particular telescope, I would have to do like maybe 5 or 10 second exposures to retain the core of the galaxy. And then after you do like a set of maybe 50 of those images, you increase your exposure time to maybe, I don't know, an average exposure time for something like this would probably be anywhere from 60 seconds to maybe even as long as 5 minutes. And that really brings out the detail in the dust lanes on the outside of the core, and you combine your short exposures with your long exposures, so you get kind of the best of both worlds as far as getting the detail. Okay, so let's look for another target here. Oh, I was really wanting to show you like a globular star cluster, but let's try to find a nebula here. The Heart Nebula would work. Ooh, the Rosette is actually coming up, but it's still too low. Orion's still too low. Okay, let's try. Wait, where's the Heart Nebula? Actually, the Heart Nebula, it's in the north. That's not going to work. Flaming Star might work. Let's give this one a try. This is SH2-229, which is known as the Flaming Star Nebula. The telescope will do what's known as a meridian flip. It will go from shooting one side of the sky and completely slew to the other side of the sky, passing the meridian. And right there, you see that little speck and that white bright light in the center of the telescope. That's the IR, the infrared light from my security camera, shining directly into that. Oh gosh, and we're gonna have IR light in this entering in the telescope from my security cam. Now it's funny because if I'm standing beside the telescope, you know, you don't see infrared light, so you can't see any of this glow. But obviously on the security cam view, it looks like that area is lit up, like there's a little bit of light there, but you can't see that light when you're actually beside the telescope. But anyway, let's try to do an exposure of the Heart galaxy here. Didn't completely go to. There we go. Okay, it says that that's centered, but I don't like that. Let's see if I can get that centered a little bit better. There we go. Let's do that. Detected 1,568 stars in this view. Okay, so that, what you're looking at here is just like a 2-second exposure. So this is just a 2-second exposure of the Heart galaxy. So let's see what we can see with a 60-second exposure. Starting that now. Okay, so Kieran is asking, does the telescope track constantly to adjust for the rotation of the Earth? It does, actually. The telescope will, using the little guide scope, it'll focus on a particular group of stars, and it looks for one that has a particular brightness that it can measure very easily. And it will try to keep that directly in the center of the frame. Where it is. Okay, so we did actually capture some of the nebulosity in this. This is known as the Flaming Star Nebula, and the tracking is actually pretty good. Technically speaking, I don't have the guide cam running on this because we're doing such short exposures, but that might be something that would be interesting for another episode, is to show you how the guide camera works. It will send small pulses to the tracking mount to make sure that it's lined up on the stars properly. And for some reason, I'm not getting a full signal from the acquisition computer. And that's really odd. Alright, let's see if we can troubleshoot that. Oh, okay. Let's see what's going on here. Just need to get it to screen. There we go. Okay, so take off the crosshairs. So you can kind of see in the central part of this image, this kind of red haze into here. You see a little bit of structure just to the left of this really bright star here. This is hydrogen gas clouds. This whole red area is basically hydrogen gas clouds. And since this was only a 60-second exposure, we'll just for comparison's sake, we're going to do a 3-minute exposure, and this red area we should notice gets much brighter here. Now, if I were actually doing full-blown astrophotography, this is if I was doing excuse me, full-blown photography, I would have the guide camera focused in on a particular set of stars so it could track those stars and keep everything central to the image. And when you do that, it keeps everything in focus much better. And if you don't do that on very long exposures, your stars will start to, they almost start to look like comets. They'll have like little streaked tails from where they're kind of streaking across as the exposure is being taken. Okay, we've got 100 seconds left on this exposure. So this nebula that we're looking at is called the Flaming Star Nebula. It's also known as Caldwell 31. It's also designated as IC405 in a different catalog, and it's also known as SH2-229 in a different catalog. But it's a combination of an emission nebula and a reflection nebula, which means that the reflection part of the nebula, you're generally going to see like blue colors from ionized gas that the central core large stars are reflecting, and the emission part of the nebula is also ionized gas, but this is ionized hydrogen gas instead of ionized oxygen gas. So a lot of times you can tell the difference if it's an emission nebula versus a reflection nebula simply by the color. Your emission nebulas are going to be your reddish tones, sometimes yellow. Your reflection nebula are generally going to be blue, like a kind of a cyan blue color. Okay, that exposure is done. It's preparing, and it's getting ready to send. And there it is. So you can see how much it brightens up the stars, but we definitely have a lot more of this red nebulosity in the center here. Can you come over here and say hey? Come here. Alright, so my dog wants to come over here and say hey to y'all. This is Thea. She's an Italian Greyhound. Yeah, right. Yeah, she was named after a Grateful Dead song, Althea. But she probably wants to stay warm over here, so we'll get her under her blanket. Lay down. Oh, you just want to sit here? We'll just cover you up right here. You can do your little Jedi look here. Here we go. All right, back to the show. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit more about this particular nebula here. This is in the constellation Auriga, which is kind of in the north celestial part of the sky. The central core stars are very large, kind of blue variable stars. AE. Well, I won't go into that. That's like a very difficult Latin pronunciation. But anyway, it shines at magnitude +6, which the magnitudes go in reverse. Like the smaller the number, the brighter it is. Like say Sirius would be like a magnitude 1, and this is a magnitude 6, so it's a magnitude of 6 times less bright as the star Sirius. This particular nebula has different open star clusters in it. One of them is M38, the other one is M36, and these are K-class stars. The nebula is about 1,500 light years away from Earth. So the light that we're seeing from this nebula has literally taken 1,500 years to reach the camera sensor here. And the entire nebula, we're only seeing about maybe, I would estimate we're only seeing about maybe 80% of the nebula here. And the entire width of this nebula is about 5 light years across. Alright, so let's see if we can find something different here. We'll do one more, and then we'll wrap up for the night. Okay. Generally speaking, they put the best targets up at the top. So let's see what we've got here. And unfortunately, I can't show you the moon with this telescope because it's just way too fast. It would just be a bright blob. You wouldn't really be able to see anything. Let's see here. There's the California Nebula. I'm probably going to be too... Well, that might actually work. Alright, let's keep that one in mind. It's the rosette. I would really like to show you that, but it's too low. Tadpoles. Probably takes a little bit more focal length. Okay, let's try the Sol Nebula. Oh wait, no, that's in the north. Can't do that one. Here is a spiral cluster in the northeast. I might be able to reach that one. Let's keep that one in mind too. Lizard. This time of the year, it's kind of slim pickings in, well, I mean, relatively speaking, in the, like from the northeast to the southwest. Essentially, we're moving into galaxy season because the bands of the Milky Way are moving more towards the south and towards the west right now, and that's where all of the main nebulosity is, or the most of the mass of the nebulosity is. So those are generally going to be better in the summertime, or late fall is really good to image the Milky Way nebulosity. Let's go back to this star cluster. I don't think I've actually ever imaged this one before. Actually, here's the shoe buckle cluster. I'm going to try to slew to this one. It might be a little bit too low, but I'm just going to give it a try. M35. I don't know if I've actually ever targeted this before. Okay, we're getting 2,255 stars, so we're definitely on it. Okay, there we go. Wow, that's really pretty. And that's just a couple of seconds of exposure time. So now this, technically speaking, this is still an open star cluster, but you can certainly see a lot tighter stars, and you can see several like lines of stars. There's all types of, it looks like little tentacles of stars coming out of this main cluster. So let's do a 60-second exposure, and this should really brighten this up. I think I actually see a little bit of nebulosity down below this cluster as well. Go ahead and start that. Let's see here. Huh, strange. So apparently the live stream is restricted to certain people. Why that is, I'm not sure. But anyway, we've got our 60-second exposure here. Wow, that is. See, stuff like this just kind of blows my mind. You know, if you were on a planet within this star cluster, you would be able to look out and see, like, there would be like multiple suns in your sky at pretty much all time. You might not even have really like a nighttime, like that we have here, because there's so many stars in this particular area, and you can see some nebulosity down below the core of this cluster. And I'm kind of wondering if I can bring out that nebulosity in that. Let's give it a try with a 2-minute exposure. Okay, M35, and the nebula is NGC 2158. I'm not actually, that might be the Fly Nebula. Let me look that up. NGC 2158. It doesn't say. I have a feeling that is the Fly Nebula. I could be wrong. So, M35, what's known as the shoe buckle cluster, is in the constellation of Gemini, and it was apparently it was discovered in 1745, and then again independently in 1750. It is it's almost 3,000 light years away from the Earth, and that's just kind of like a ballpark figure of like some of the core central stars, like the largest stars. How much longer do we have? We've got 30 seconds left on this exposure. Right. Okay, let's just finish that. Preparing to send the image. And it just sent. There we go. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that's interesting. That's actually not a nebula. That is just, it's a different star cluster. I can tell now because the coloration, I can see the gaps in between the stars. So this is kind of interesting in comparison to the larger cluster, because this larger cluster has large young blue stars, and this small cluster down below it to the right seems to have older and larger, redder and more yellow orange stars. So it's interesting because these apparently have formed possibly millions of years apart from each other, even though they look close in this particular view. Of course they can be many light years apart. Maybe they could be a million light years apart from each other. It's hard to tell these distances because to our eyes it just looks like a 2D image here. But so I guess that will probably wrap us up for tonight. So far I think this was a pretty successful test. Seems like most of the elements have worked pretty well, and I'm happy that the scope is tracking good. The acquisition computer sending a solid signal. Still a lot of stuff to work on. Need to get my volume levels right. I'll have more elements like overlays, possibly the names of the images, and maybe some information about each image. But a lot more to come. So definitely check back from time to time, and any live stream that I do, I'm going to try to record it so you can go back and check it out later. Just look in the little videos tab on the channel. But I'm really glad that we had some viewers tonight to to help with the test. And if you haven't already subscribed, please like and subscribe, hit that bell icon to get more notifications, and hopefully we can enjoy more live streams together. So I will see y'all later. Have a good night.